We need to discuss the crypto death toll. I'm not talking about any kind of human deaths. I'm talking about the deaths of projects. I don't mean the FTXs of the world that catastrophically collapse. I'm talking about actual, honest to goodness, decentralized crypto projects that die not because of any fraud or wrongdoing, but maybe just because they don't quite achieve success and they eventually fail and succumb to entropy. Sadly, this is already happening in crypto and even in Cardano. I'm concerned that people don't fully appreciate the risks of this happening to their favorite project. But this is an area where I think we'll all benefit from a more skeptical, realist perspective. Ready? Let's go. Today, we'll discuss the BlackRock 2023 Outlook paper, what's happening right now in crypto in terms of projects dying, the recent AMA from Charles, everyone in Solana realizing their NFTs may be centralized, and things getting worse and worse for Representative Waters in the FTX debacle. If you feel like you would happily trade places with whatever animal left the skull behind because you're someplace in the northern hemisphere in the middle of cold and frigid winter, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. We're going to talk about this whole issue of projects dying during crypto winter. It's something that's happening right now and will continue happening and will happen in every single crypto winter now and in the future, just like it has in the past. But I think it's important to put this in the context of what might be coming for us on the macroeconomic front. And let me preface this by saying, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen. But you do know who BlackRock is. Infamously, they own everything. And I think it's relevant. I think it's interesting to consider what they think might be coming for us in 2023. Again, I don't believe that anybody knows what's going to happen, but some of the things they wrote in this report did consume a decent amount of my thoughts this weekend. So, and it's not really anything new. I don't think they're saying anything that people haven't been saying for a while, but it's interesting that they're putting this out there. So this is this is not necessarily my position. We're just going to talk about what BlackRock put in this report. This first paragraph lays out quite a bit of it, this bolded paragraph here. The great moderation, the 4-decade period of largely stable activity and inflation is behind us. The new regime of greater macro and market volatility is playing out. A recession is foretold. Strong language there. This 4-decade period of stability and sort of predictable inflation is behind us. A recession is foretold. Central banks are on course to over-tighten policy as they seek to tame inflation. This keeps us being BlackRock, tactically underweight on developed market equities. We expect to turn more positive on risk assets at some point in 2023, but we are not there yet. And when we get there, we don't see the sustained bull markets of the past. That's why a new investment playbook is needed. So we're not going to go through their particular investment playbook, but I think it's interesting that they're using such strong language. We don't see the sustained bull markets of the past. They're saying a 4-decade period. So that would be the 80s, the 90s, and the 2 decades of the century. That era, in their mind, is over. They don't see the same sustained bull markets in the future that we've seen over that period. So they have 3 big themes for this paper. And I think the first one is probably the most important. So the second and third are rethinking bonds and living with inflation. But this first piece is the piece that I think might be most interesting for us. They say what matters most, we think, is how much of the economic damage is already reflected in market pricing. This is why pricing the damage is our first 2023 investment theme. And they're talking about the damage from the central banks hiking rates. They say, case in point, equity valuations don't yet reflect the damage ahead in their view. We will turn positive on equities when we think the damage is priced in or our view of market risk sentiment changes, yet we won't see this as a prelude to another decade-long bull market in stocks and bonds. They say we will not see this any kind of a turn here as beginning another decade-long bull market in stocks and bonds. The language throughout this paper is pretty much emphasizing that they don't see big bull markets in the future for us. And this chart kind of tells the story. So this chart shows GDP and what's happened recently. So you can see the red line is GDP, the yellow line is the trend line, and they're showing GDP kind of being sort of following this trend up until right about here, 2020, the beginning of this situation. Then we have this big dip here, and then the red GDP line is sort of returning to trend, but they show this for 2023. This green line is where they think we would have to go to get back to 2% inflation. So they're showing getting inflation all the way back down to target, the dotted green line, would require the Fed to deal a significant blow to the economy. They labeled this as a large drop in GDP needed to close the gap between demand and supply in 2023. What's interesting, as bad as this would be in terms of GDP, they don't even think the central banks are going to be able to accomplish their goal. They say, so recession is foretold. Signs of a slowdown are emerging. But as the damage becomes real, we believe they'll stop their hikes, even though inflation won't be on track to get all the way down to 2%. So they think the central banks are going to over tighten. We're going to suffer this kind of drop in GDP as they attempt to get down to 2%, but they don't even think they'll get there. They believe they'll stop their hikes, even though inflation won't be on track to get all the way down to 2%. And of course, that feeds into their third theme that we're just going to be living in an era of greater inflation from now on. Obviously, this is not the kind of thing you want to see BlackRock saying if you're imagining the perfect macroeconomic environment for crypto to flourish and somehow escape this long crypto winter we're in. If you believe that BlackRock is correct, then crypto might be facing some macroeconomic headwinds next year. But we don't even need an unfavorable macroeconomic situation for projects to start dying because that's already happening. Here's a tweet from Patrick Tobler. He says, business idea, there are many good NFT brands that have created a community and strong IP, but failed to create a continuous revenue model. They are dying in this market. Acquiring them for low capital and creating products around them can lead to a lot of upside. I'm not showing you this tweet for the information about the potential of people acquiring these projects. I'm showing you this tweet because it indicates what is happening, not just in NFTs, but across different types of projects. They're already dying in crypto winter. We saw what happened with the collapse of Cardano and Orbis, but this is not an NFT phenomenon or a DeFi phenomenon. This is an all types of crypto projects phenomenon. This is going to be happening probably more and more often with all different types of projects across crypto. This is definitely not a Cardano thing. Across crypto and including Cardano, this is going to be happening. Down below here, he says, there are a ton of NFT projects in trouble at the moment and looking for investors, etc., but I can't disclose anything for other projects. There was another thread dropped this weekend from Flantoshi where that account expressed this sentiment. My conclusion from seeing the inside of a bunch of projects is that crypto must die for blockchain to live. The tech is very promising, but it has been misused. And while I don't know how much of crypto will or needs to die, I think some portions of crypto are definitely going to die. This includes DeFi projects, and we can even just talk about Cardano. There are going to be DeFi projects that we are seeing get a lot of fanfare right now. Some of those projects are going to die. A lot of NFT projects are going to die. Metaverse projects are going to die. We've talked a few times on this channel about how there are some questions about the ongoing costs of metaverse projects. These virtual worlds have to be hosted on servers somewhere. There are hard costs to keeping these virtual worlds up and running. And I've tried to cover a large portion of the Cardano metaverse and gaming projects on this channel. So there will be projects we've talked about on this channel that will fail at some point in the future. They might have some recurring revenue streams from something like royalty payments from trades made in the secondary markets. They might have ongoing mints to help fund some of their operations. But just like we saw with Ardana and Orbis, the problem with startups is that the problem with startups, and I'm including crypto startups here, is this. I'm going to give you the list of things that startups are good at: spending all their money. That's the list. That's the entire list. The list of things that startups are good at is a list of one thing, and that's spending all their money, which is apparently what happened in the case of Orbis and Ardana. And a lot of other projects will do the same thing. They will spend all of their money, and their ability to raise new funds will not meet the hard costs of keeping their project running. This is going to happen with a lot of different projects. So you really need to be careful in a lot of crypto projects. It's a little bit different than the world outside of crypto, where we could all be enthusiasts of a certain, a certain series of video games or something. We could all like, a series of games, and we could talk about it on the channel. And it's not a situation where people could accidentally put too much money into that game. It's like you go and buy the latest copy of Call of Duty. It's a certain amount of money. You're probably, unless you do something wild, you're probably not going to spend, into the thousands of dollars on the next copy of, or the next installment of Call of Duty. But that can happen in crypto. And I think that's where people really need to be very realistic and skeptical about what things like look like going forward. Because if you don't, what I always tell everybody is to, especially with these metaverse projects, to think of them as very expensive game pieces to play a game, and you're never going to see that money again. That's very intentional, because some of these projects will fail. You won't even get to play the game in some cases. There will be Cardano metaverse projects that will fail at some point in the future. There will be Cardano DeFi projects that fail at some point in the future. A lot of NFT projects will fail, and it sounds like they're starting to fail already. This is something that's going to happen. Again, I don't believe that anybody knows the future, but there's definitely a version of the future, one apparently that BlackRock believes in, where things only get worse in 2023. In 2023, this all might get accelerated. We might have more and more projects failing. So you really can't think of any of these projects as anything safe. They're not safe places to put any amount of money you would care about. Some small amount of money you don't care about, if you're just buying, something involved with the project, you like that project and you're accepting that that project could fail, all of that money could disappear, could all be gone, just like all the investments in Ardana and Orbis. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen even with those two projects, but I think we can see there was quite a loss there. And this is probably going to keep happening. More projects are going to fail. So I think at this point, especially at this point on the timeline, everybody should adopt a really skeptical and realist perspective about where things could go next year. So be aware, there are probably going to be more Ardanas, but this situation could even be compounded by regulatory developments. Over the weekend, Charles dropped this AMA. It was a long one, 2 hours and 11 minutes, if that timer in the bottom left there is to be trusted. And he got some questions about the regulatory landscape going forward. And as part of answering that question, he mentioned that he's been hearing rumors that there could be an SEC Ripple settlement on the 15th of December, which is this Thursday, I believe. This is interesting because if we get a settlement in that case, it might not give us any additional regulatory clarity. If we get a judgment in that case, we'll actually get a judge giving us some additional insight into where things are going, at least where that line of jurisprudential thinking is headed on the crypto regulatory issue. But if we get a settlement, then it's just a settlement, and we don't find out what would have actually happened in that case if it had gone all the way to judgment. This could be pretty bad for crypto because the Ripple SEC litigation has kind of been the focal point of a lot of the thinking about what was going to happen going forward. And it looked like the Ripple side was going to push this about as far as they could. But if we get a settlement, then we don't actually find out which way that case would have gone. To be honest, uh, it's at this point, it's not, given what happened in the library case and other recent cases, things haven't been going our way as far as crypto regulatory litigation. But if we get this settlement with no sort of resolution of all the issues tied up in that Ripple case, then we're kind of just left back in that same place that the SEC can go after whoever they want. And it's just sort of a lottery to see when your number comes up. And if your number does come up, you know, you could try to fight it like Library did. Didn't work out very well for Library. And if we get this settlement in this Ripple case, then, that's not exactly a fantastic conclusion for Ripple either. No matter what happens this month or next year in crypto, though, I'll still be able to say I'm super glad I'm in Cardano and not in Solana. Solana is still reeling from the loss of FTX. And then this happened. This is a post that says, earlier today, Metaplex falsely accused us, that's Magic Eden, falsely accused Magic Eden of trying to take control over the NFT standard on Sol. Many teams, including Solana Foundation, want Metaplex to decentralize governance of their token metadata standard so we can create a better ecosystem together. Currently, Metaplex owns the NFT standard the whole ecosystem is built on. Their plan is to commercially govern the standard for their token holders. They have a God mode key that allows them to change how it works and plan to govern it for the benefit of their token holders. That does not sound very decentralized. They have a God mode key that allows them to change how the NFT standard works. And their plan is to govern it for the benefit of their token holders, not necessarily for the ecosystem. Obviously, this is Magic Eden posting this and not me making that claim. This poster put it in a little bit more colorful way. He said, okay, looks like the rabbit is out of the hat. Just so you all know, Solana NFTs can all be updated to inappropriate photos by Metaplex, and there's nothing you can do about it. Not saying they would, but they could. Oh, they can freeze everything too. If this is all accurate, this is a level of centralization that's not even really crypto. At this point, I wouldn't even really call those true crypto assets, true crypto tokens. This is something else. If a single party has a God mode key that could allow them to freeze all these NFTs or change all of the photos, that's not even really a crypto thing to me. Speaking of things that don't quite seem right, Fortune Crypto recently dropped this article. Congress wants to talk to SBF, and that could be awkward for a key Democrat. And here they have a photo of Representative Maxine Waters in the U.S. Congress. You'll remember that when the FTX debacle first blew up, there was quite a bit of discussion about this photo of SBF and Representative Waters. It turns out this article is also focused on this photo, but it seems to be more about this person over here on the right-hand side of the photo. The article says, and while Waters is hardly the only politician to have her picture taken with SBF, her ties to FTX go deeper than that. Most notably, the photo in question also shows a woman named Allison Maynard Gibson, a prominent politician from the Bahamas who also worked as a lawyer for FTX and sat behind Bankman-Fried during a congressional hearing last year. Her daughter served as FTX's director of corporate social responsibility. According to a Washington, D.C. source, Waters and her husband, a former ambassador to the Bahamas, have stayed at Maynard Gibson's home during visits to the countries. Waters' press team did not reply to a request for comment about the extent of her ties to Maynard Gibson and whether this could create a conflict of interest in any congressional investigation she undertakes. But a closeness between the pair is suggested by a kiss Waters blew at her friend at the end of last year's hearing. So it looks like things just keep getting worse and worse for Representative Maxine Waters in terms of FTX. I have a feeling this will not be the last we hear about this connection, but I hope you had a great weekend and you're starting a great week. I'll talk to you tomorrow.